Welcome to Vegan Food and Living's Simply Vegan podcast with me, Holly Johnson, and my co-host, Molly Pickering. Yep, it's the Holly and Molly show. Each week we'll be ranting about vegan news, raving about new food launches, and responding to your questions on all things plant-based. I also chat to vegan chefs, experts, and influencers about everything from fermented food and nutrition to weight loss, herbalism, and seaweed. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Vegan podcast. We're very excited this week because we have a new host, Molly Pickering, who is the digital assistant on Vegan Food and Living. That is really hard to say, digital assistant. So hi, Molly, how are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have a new host for a while Gabrielle is off. I thought we would kick off with a little quickfire Q&A to test your veganness. Are you up for it?
Don't put me to shame. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, right. Question number one, reason for going vegan.
I had really bad eczema and someone told me to cut out dairy and then I did. And also I live in Bristol, so vegan capital. Brilliant.
Best vegan food you've ever eaten?
Do you know what? This weekend actually, me and my partner, we went to, it's called Breaking Bread, it's in Bristol, on the Downs. And it was just like barbecued veg, that's all it was, but it was just amazing, so good. And I think that's got to be my top vegan food.
Okay, lush, I need to check that out. Worst vegan food you've ever eaten?
I don't like vegan cheese at all. I hate it.
Yeah, it's got a way to go, hasn't it? We'll have to get some good ones on here for you to taste test though. When did you last eat nooch or nutritional yeast?
Not last night, the night before. I put it in pasta sauces all the time.
Name 3 vegan celebrities.
Oh gosh. Oh my god. Joaquin Phoenix, Billie Eilish, and Brian May.
Love it. Okay, last question. What is tempeh?
Oh god, do you know what? This is something that I've never tried in my whole life. Isn't it like soya but nutty?
Yes, but it's fermented, so it's supposed to be good for your gut. It's a bit of a weird one. I think you either love it or hate it. I'm still kind of trying to find a good way to
it's one of those things that I see all the time and I see so many recipes about it and I've just never tried it. I'm tofu all the way.
Okay, well, we'll give you 5 out of 6 for that one.
I'll take that.
You're pretty vegan, I'll let you stay. Okay, well, on to the news. So I'm afraid I might get a bit ranty on today's episode because the first thing is, and as always, you can read more on the Vegan Food and Living website about these news stories. It's the news that Plant Hustler, which is a vegan restaurant in Bournemouth, which actually is only an hour away from me. And I was born in Bournemouth, actually. So it's quite close to my heart. The restaurant used to be Dirty Vegan, and I think that closed during COVID and it's reopened as Plant Hustler. So basically trading standards popped by to, check everything's going okay and asked them to remove their murals on the walls, which listed lots of benefits of a plant-based diet. Yeah, and they also said their menu was misleading because it mentioned prawns and cheese.
It's ridiculous. I don't know. I literally wrote this story the other day and I was just writing it and it's just the same argument all the time, really, isn't it? This, people are going to get confused that vegan milk is real milk and who is making these judgments? Like, it's not, I don't see it as an issue. I did take a look at the menu and it does say prawns and cheese and it doesn't say like, sometimes you have this misspelling, don't you, of like cheese with a Z or whatever. And it wasn't any of that. And do you know what? I kind of respect that a bit. I think that, veganism has grown so much and we're moving into an age now where people know that it's not the real thing. So why are we labeling it these different silly words?
Yeah, you don't really walk into a restaurant that says Plant Hustler and has vegan, the walls are covered in kind of vegan murals and go, oh, what? I ordered real prawns. Exactly. Why aren't these? I mean, maybe they could have put it in inverted commas or, like you say, misspell the prawns with a Z. But, we're just getting this bit nitpicky, isn't it?
I think what they requested was for him to cover the whole wall. And I think it's just so excessive.
Yeah, so Trading Standards warned them that the mural was misleading and had no significant evidence. But the stats, I believe, were from the Vegan Society,
Yeah, I
is that
think
right?
so.
Saying that there's no significant evidence to support the fact that a plant-based diet is healthier than a meat and
It's
dairy heavy diet.
ridiculous.
It's absolute rubbish. I mean, there's so much
I
science
know,
out
it's
there
crazy.
now.
I think there was also, I think they might have used more than just the Vegan Society, actually. I think there was actual like scientific evidence. And the guy, I can't remember his name, is Aaron something, I can't remember it. But he put on the Plant Hustlers Instagram account all of the references that they used for the mural, which I thought was really interesting. And they give this evidence to Trading Standards and they ignored it completely.
Okay, well, I really, really hope this goes viral, because I know he's calling for like people to tag celebrities and stuff. And one person had tagged Lewis Hamilton. So
Yeah.
come on, Lewis,
Come on,
share
you can
this.
do it.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next news story. This is another cause for vegan rants. Vegan dad Paul Roberts has won a battle against his daughter's primary school, forcing the school to change its cow's milk or water scheme. So his little girl, I believe, she was 5, was not offered any alternative to the cow's milk that the class were having other than water. And when he kind of spoke to the school, I mean, that's fair enough. You know, it's the age we live in still. We're still kind of making advances, aren't we? But surely when you speak to the school, you'd expect them to then be like, yeah, you're right, actually. And especially because there was another member of the class who was dairy intolerant. It wasn't like this was a choice for that child.
Exactly.
So then he had a 9-month court battle against the school.
It's so ridiculous. I think that I think he went to the governing bodies and it was dismissed so many times. Apparently it caused him like severe anxiety, insomnia, like he was so worried. I think, I don't know, not to say that it might have gone, that might be a little bit extreme, because you don't know how people are feeling in these circumstances, and you know that's your child at the end of the day. But I think for the school to just completely dismiss it, and I remember, you know, milk time at school, and I hated, I really didn't like milk when I was younger, so I would never have milk. And I kind of remember feeling a bit like isolated, just like, well, what can I have then? And I think it is important because, you know, they're that age and they need to socialize and whatever. And even if it is just having a bit of milk together.
Definitely. Well, I'm really glad that he finally won the battle. This leads us quite nicely on to our reader question this week, which is from Nicola. And if you want to email your questions in, we now have a special email address, simplyvegan@anthem.co.uk, where you can reach me. She wanted to know which plant milk is most sustainable. The BBC did an article on this in 2019, actually, with some nice infographics. I love an infographic, don't you?
Love it. Yeah.
Just want to I just want it all there, like quick access to the stats.
This is just the culture we're in now, though, isn't it? Just, I need everything in picture form and I need to retain the information within a minute and then I'm good to go.
Exactly. I don't want to be scrolling for ages having to read stuff.
No. So lazy.
So dairy milk is by far the worst offender. If you look at the graph, dairy is way out above the others for emissions, land use and water use. Next comes almond milk and rice milk, which use a lot of water, but again are much better than dairy in the other areas. And then we have soy and oat milk. So oat milk uses slightly more water than soy, but soy is a tiny bit higher on emissions. But both oat milk and soy are very low on all the categories on the graph. So what milks do you use?
I'm oat all the way. Oat me up, baby. I love it. That was like the milk that when I first went vegan, like that was the one that turned me. I had almond milk for a bit, and even though I love it now, I think I prefer it in like coffees and stuff and cereals. It's got a bit more of a sweeter taste to it. But I think oat milk is just a perfect all-rounder. The flavor, there isn't much to it, which I quite like. Yeah, and it's just, I think it's a bit cheaper as well.
Thinking about what would be literally the most sustainable way to drink milk. And I think it would be to buy, not that many people are going to do this, and that includes me, but bulk buy zero waste organic oats and then make your own at home. So you wouldn't have the waste of the packaging or the cost of the shipping of the packaging, not the cost, the emissions and everything from, shipping all these heavy, what are they, Tetra Packs, aren't they? That would be the most sustainable. But Nicola, we don't know what your lifestyle's like. Chances are
very wholesome.
Chances are
just making my own milk.
Yeah. You can also, some health food shops do like a refill, don't they? I used to have one.
Yeah.
So that would be cool. But let's face it, how many of us really have the time to be like making oat milk?
Yeah.
So what brand do you go for then? Because I'm kind of Alpro all the way.
So yeah, I do tend to be Alpro. Tesco have actually just started doing their own oat milk as well, but I can never get hold of that.
Okay.
I did used to be Oatly until all of the controversy started coming out about them, and I think I can't go back now. It's just too much damage has been done. I think after what they did with, was it Glebe Farm? Quite recently, actually, I think within the last couple of weeks, they pursued a court case against this independent family-run. It's a farm, but they've just started doing like oat milk alternatives, and they're called like Pure Oatly, I think their oat milk is called. And Oatly have set up a court case against them because they said that it's infringing on their brand. Side by side, both products are completely different. There is not a single, I think the only thing that's similar is that they've got like a coffee cup illustration. That's about it. There's nothing else that I can see on there. It's ridiculous. And loads of people I've seen on Oatly social media have just called them bullies. They've just kind of cancelled them. I think they've been cancelled.
Right. Oh, Oatly. Okay, we've got time for one more question this week, which is from Callum, again via email. Callum wants to know what our favourite recipe is for new vegans. So something really simple that you can just throw together in like 10 minutes.
Okay. Shall I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. So I think for me, it's quite a new recipe that I've been trying actually. It's Szechuan, it's quite hard to say. Szechuan braised aubergine and broccoli. So you fry ginger, garlic, coriander, spring onions, all the main boys, soy sauce and Szechuan peppercorns, and then you literally just lay aubergine and broccoli on top of it, put a lid on the pan, and a bit of water and a bit of stock, a few other bits as well, and just leave it for about 10 minutes and take the lid off, add in sesame oil, rice wine vinegar and coriander, lid back on for 5 minutes, and then you're done. It's amazing. Super soft, tender.
That sounds really good. But just aubergine's a funny one, isn't it? Some people are like really not kind of big fans.
Yeah.
Does it go like mushy or?
Yeah, so for me it kind of it's slightly meaty, so it depends on what aubergines you get. We're going to go down a big route now. I think Chinese aubergines work really well. I think they're the ones, they're lighter purple and they've kind of got like white stripes in them. Those work really well because they don't go too mushy, so there's kind of like still a bit of texture to it. It's not like proper, I don't know, like melt in your mouth a bit much, but then maybe that's what you want, so I don't know. I was kind of hit and miss with aubergines, and then as I started being more vegan, as my vegan diet like progressed, I started loving them.
Okay, because I've got one in the fridge, but I don't think it's a Chinese aubergine. I don't think I've ever seen a Chinese aubergine, which is probably
fruit and veg stores.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, it's probably because I live down in the depths of, deepest, darkest Dorset, and we don't have anything.
Oh, no. Deepest, darkest Dorset. I love that.
Well, I used to live in a trendy city. I used to live in Bristol as well. Sadly, and I'm very, very sad about this, I wasn't vegan when I was there. And now, obviously, I follow loads of like Bristol stuff because I've still got friends up there, and I see all these amazing restaurants popping up, like the what's it called? The meze place, Kucha.
Oh, Kucha. I can see Kucha from my window. I love it so much. They've just had a revamp actually, and it's beautiful inside, and the food is just delicious. Also, LD's Kitchen. I don't know if you've heard about their vegan like soul food, barbecue soul food. Oh, delicious.
What's it called?
LD's Kitchen.
LD, like the letters LD.
LD's Kitchen. They're ex-musicians who obviously during the pandemic lost their jobs and stuff, and I think her name was, I can't remember her name. Anyway, the owner of it, she set up this kitchen and hired only musicians, ex-musicians.
Oh wow. Oh
I
my
know,
God.
and they're doing so well.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to be booking in to come and visit my friend soon. Obviously, you know, I'll have to kind of make it sound like I'm there to see her, but really I'm just going to be doing a tour of vegan eateries in Bristol. Okay, my recipe would be, and I'm going to go for a lunch option because I think a lot of people are often a bit stuck for lunch. It's kind of like,
that's true.
What do I have? Do I have, you know, I can just have soup or salad or couscous.
It gets a bit samey.
It does. And the chickpea tuna for me is a bit of a revelation. Do you eat this?
Love it so much. They're just so good. Chickpeas are amazing.
Yeah, so I don't bother mashing the chickpeas because that takes too long. I just stick them in the blender. Don't blend them for too long though. You still want a few little crunchy ones hanging around in there. You for a bit of texture.
You get hummus.
Yeah, exactly. So just give it a quick whiz on the blender. Chuck in some crushed garlic, some lemon juice, Dijon mustard, nutritional yeast. Do you put that in yours?
Yeah, I've never done that before, but that sounds good.
Yeah, I mean you can chuck anything in. Red onion.
It's so versatile.
Yeah, red onion, chopped celery, whatever you want, and then obviously a big dollop or perhaps a few big dollops of vegan mayo. I think Heinz have got a new one, haven't they, out now? Vegan mayo.
Yeah, I got it the other day when I went shopping because it was the only one there, but it's very good.
Yeah. I mean, it looks quite pale. I don't know why it looks slightly paler than the Hellman one, but I can't taste the difference. So yeah, I have that in a baguette or a sandwich, which and it's so addictive. You literally like find me in the fridge, like, you know, at bedtime.
Just have it on top of everything. It's so good. In pasta as well. Great. And then you've got tuna pasta salad.
Yum. Oh my God, I'm getting hungry now. Okay. Yeah, on a jacket potato as well. So you could have it for dinner, or lunch. So yeah, that is my recipe. It's been so nice to chat to you today, Molly.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've had a ball. See you next week.
Definitely, yeah. Or actually, see you next Tuesday. But I don't know whether I should actually say that on this show.
I think you can. Let's push the boat out.
Don't go anywhere. Next up is I'll be speaking to Lauren Lovatt. I keep saying Laverne, but it's definitely not Lauren Laverne. It's Lauren Lovatt. She's a plant-based chef and entrepreneur. She's founder of the Plant Academy in London and the woman behind Feed Your Mind Candy, a project dedicated to delicious food designed to feed your mind, which is obviously very topical with mental health.
Definitely.
After COVID. So don't go anywhere and enjoy the interview. Well, summer has arrived and Vegan Food and Living are offering a trial to their Plus membership, along with a copy of the magazine delivered to your home in recyclable paper wrap for just £1. You'll also have access to their digital archive, which features every issue of Vegan Food and Living magazine ever published, and you'll receive exclusive discounts with their vegan partners. Give Vegan Food and Living a go for £1 by going to shop.veganfoodandliving.com and entering the code SUMMERVEGAN, no spaces. Welcome to the podcast, Lauren. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks so much for having me.
So I'm really excited to chat to you, actually. It's kind of gut health and the link between, what we eat and our mental health is something that I'm actually really passionate about. But should we start at the beginning? Do you want to tell us a bit about your background and kind of what led you to plant-based cooking?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been really into food. So since I was a kid, kind of cooking and being around ingredients has always been something that I was absolutely fascinated by. But it wasn't until later, when we were kind of, you know, deciding what to do, where to go to university, what the options were, that I really started to, yeah, you know, think like, oh, well, food wouldn't be an option for that. So I actually went and studied art and then went on to do fashion. And food was always kind of like on the back burner as something that I just loved, like, and not just plant-based food at that time, just kind of cooking in general. I was obsessed with like, you know, making like 3-course dinners for my family, and I'd be like perfecting souffles and like filleting fish and like all of the things. It was like a real fascination. But I went on to study, and during that time, well, I met, you know, so many amazing people, and I was like studying art, and I kind of met my then boyfriend, who was very early on diagnosed with bipolar. And at the time, it was like this word that I was like, what is this? Like, we didn't know. I remember like sitting down together and looking through this whole list of symptoms, and then like, you know, different drugs and all the things. And it was like, okay, like, you know, you start to really understand about mental health. And I think until that point, I mean, being very fortunate, but I hadn't really come across any like major issues with like friends and everything when I was younger. So mental health became like a huge part of our lives. And at that time, we were living quite a crazy lifestyle. Like, although I'd still be kind of like rustling things up and making quite like elaborate dinners when I could, it was very much like, you know, the uni life. And later down the line, we both went off to study different things. I was going off to do fashion design and marketing, and he was going off to do photography in London. And and then so it was kind of this time of like, is this what I want to do? It all felt kind of quite rushed, and we had been through a lot together, like seeing someone so creative and passionate and excited about kind of like, you know, especially photography and like that, you know, what's possible, have this real side to him that, you know, he couldn't control. It was really, really scary for all of us to see. And then, very long story kind of shortened, but I went off to study somewhere else, and we were very much like, you know, working out what was going to happen. And after a series of many different events, but unfortunately I got a phone call one day from his twin brother saying that he'd committed suicide. And so it was, I mean, from that point, it kind of obviously like turned my life upside down. It was, you know, a very long time of being sort of in limbo, like myself and obviously family and everyone around him. And, you know, it was a really horrible and crazy time. So I obviously was like rethinking, like, you know, I'm here studying this thing, and I obviously like, you know, left uni for a bit and then kind of ended up working out like, you know, how to go back and if I wanted to and everything. But then it, for me, took a bit of a turn for the worse. So I kind of developed different eating disorders and had a real, concoction of different mental health issues. And after a very long time of being really kind of like in limbo, very distraught, I just became obsessed with food in a very destructive way. And that went on for a really long time. But although I was obsessed, there was something about it. And still, I ended up trying to complete my degree, but then moving back home. And I was kind of still then had the chance to be cooking for my family. And although I couldn't necessarily connect with food in such a positive way, cooking was still something I would spend nearly the whole day just cooking. And it was still then was such a therapy to me to just have that, like something that I loved to do, that, you know, it's kind of like creative, and there was something about it. But time went on, and luckily, dealing with everything, I did have a very good support network around me. And although, you know, people didn't really know how to react to the whole situation, as time went on, you know, people were trying to find ways to help. And I ended up having an amazing counsellor, and then starting acupuncture, and just what felt like overnight, this just something clicked in me, and I was like, right, I really I want to get better. I think for many years I just didn't want to get better, but suddenly I did. And food, and plant-based food, was really that thing that helped. And I'd learned so much over those years, like, you know, obviously being quite obsessed with food, but also then learning about more kind of, you know, ways that food could impact us in positive ways. And it was just about when the kind of like wellness thing was beginning, when vegan food was definitely becoming a thing. And I took all of that knowledge that I'd kind of been like reading about and learning about, and I was like, right, I know how to use food as kind of like medicine. Like, how am I going to do this? I knew a more kind of like traditional approach to kind of getting better wasn't necessarily going to be the thing for me. So I carved out my own way, and over time, everything really started to click into place, and ended up finishing what turned into a sort of 5-year degree and writing a book all about mental health and food as my kind of final project. And I kind of channeled everything that had happened into this kind of like trend design book all about a mind food lifestyle, and it was like basically my handbook for life. So it was a huge opportunity to really kind of think like, okay, I had learned I didn't really want to do fashion, but how could I kind of make food like in that way that was more like lifestyle related. So I ended up in my last year just getting all of the food jobs I could find. I was like living in the Cotswolds at the time, and I was like, right, like how can I do this? So I was working at like little farm shops and pubs and everything, and just like really slowly rebuilding my kind of like, you know, my life and what I wanted to do. And I ended up being very lucky in that we'd just moved to the Cotswolds, and there was many opportunities down there. So when I finished my degree, I had a few different things happening, but the main one was someone that I was working for had a vegan pop-up in London that was called Asparagasm, and it was, I believe, one of the first vegan pop-ups. Used to work with incredible chefs, and it was something that I was just like mesmerized by. It was this whole like fantasy festival land of food, and I was like, okay, this is like where it's at.
I love the name Asparagasm.
It's one of those things that people just remember. Like I still bump into, if it comes up now, people always remember those kind of things because it's such a great name, and it was such a great brand. It was all kind of about, like, the logo was literally like a cowgirl riding a asparagus like bunny.
Brilliant.
And so it was very cool. It was very kind of like of that moment, and I was really lucky that the founder, Kate, she was looking to open a permanent venue for Asparagasm down where I was living. So I was kind of like, there, like being like, how can I get involved, and working all out. And one day again, a kind of call and just saying like, right, we want to start doing making vegan cheese. We're going to open this shop. Maybe it's going to be like just a cheese shop. Like, do you want to get involved? So literally like the next day, down in this kind of like derelict cafe that she'd just taken on, and we were there like serving these vegan cheeses that her chef friend had kind of developed. And it kind of, it just kind of snowballed from there. We spent 6 months setting it up. In that time, it went from being just doing cheese to a full-on like cafe restaurant. And within a week or two of us opening, the chef that we've been working with left, so I just had to be the chef like overnight. And it was like, oh my god. And and that's kind of always been like, I'd love to be in the kitchen, but I'd been taking all the courses under the sun, like, working on these restaurants, taking all the plant-based courses I could find, which is quite challenging. Like, kind of, this is maybe 7-8 years ago. To find like good plant-based courses was quite hard. But so that was my a kind of overview of how it all began.
That's a really incredible story. I'm not saying I know what you've been through at all, because everyone kind of experiences things differently. But, I lost a close male friend to suicide when I think I was in my early 20s. So, it's I know how it can kind of change the direction of your life and actually change you as a person, can't it?
Exactly. It puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? But such a shock.
Yeah, it sounds like you've really channeled it, all that kind of pain and grief into something really positive. So you trained as a raw food chef, didn't you?
I did.
So this is always, since going vegan anyway, because I'd never heard of it before going vegan sort of 3 or 4 years ago. Tell us what raw food's all about, because when you think raw food, you're like, oh, okay, so you follow a raw food diet, you basically just eat salad all year round. But I know there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
A lot more to it, yes. And so, raw food, yeah, it's always been one of those things that it has actually, some of my first like really, like eye-opening experiences were with like raw food chefs. So yeah, raw food would be literally eating everything that is raw, but that doesn't mean that it can't be kind of created in a way that has that kind of very decadent, delicious feeling. So, I mean, lots of people now will be really familiar with raw cakes, and often as well, like even a lot of plant-based cheeses will be raw, but you can make very kind of elaborate meals as well. But technically, it would be nothing is kind of treated over 42 degrees would be like the kind of benchmark. But actually, when we were first opening Asparagasm, there was a woman called Kate Magic, who is a real pioneer kind of in the raw world, and is very well known for that kind of like raw food lifestyle. She is raw.
Know of her,
and she came down and did this kind of 2-day workshop for us at Asparagasm just with some friends, and I was like, wow, like we were making these kind of adaptogenic cakes and everyone was like crying, and it was, when you're like, what's this doing to us? It was like she was talking about like purple corn and mixing it with this, and it was opening our third eyes, and I was like, wow, like and you're like, this is bonkers,
blowing my mind.
It blew my mind. But I was also like totally sold, and I was like, okay, like this is what I'm into. And it was all about still that connection of like how food makes you feel, because I think that was the whole thing. I was always like, okay, like this is so much more than just like whatever. It actually can totally change how we feel about everything, and how open we are, how perceptive we are to different things. And so raw food was really the thing that did that for me. And when I was looking for the courses to retrain as a chef, it was very, very hard to find, but there were 2 people that I came across, one of which was Amy Levin, who obviously makes raw chocolate, and the other was Deborah Durant, who had a raw food kitchen down in Gloucestershire, she just got back from training with Matthew Kenny in LA. They do raw food courses, and she was kind of replicating those with her own sort of spin on them. And so I went and trained with Debs, and then ended up assisting her for many years. And it was, really understanding like flavor and this kind of still very elaborate and beautiful plated dishes. And there was just something about it that I think, understanding that you can make these like raw cheesecakes that could rival like a mascarpone cheesecake that I used to love. I was like, wow, this is amazing to think. It just seemed more like interesting and tactile and everything. And then I ended up later down the line, we did close Asparagasm eventually, but one of the reasons being that I started to go over to LA to train with Matthew Kenny, which was another raw food course. And again, I just was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And ended up getting very involved, and I'm working for that company and then teaching for them. So it really became like a huge part of my life. And although at Asparagasm, and I mean now I never have, well, maybe in phases been 100% raw, but it's such an incredible technique to know about. And whether you're making, a cashew cream or a dessert, it does, those raw food elements, but it's often the thing, or, they really elevate a dish and take the flavour to a different place.
Quite interesting, actually, because I've never really thought about the things that I perhaps already eat as part of my diet, like cashew cheese, or I made I had friends round, and I think it was a pecan tart from Rebel Recipes book, and that was raw. But I suppose you kind of think, oh, anyone who's on a raw food vegan diet they must be really out there, and they're in the kitchen all the time. But there obviously are things that you might do without thinking that are raw. Do you think it's quite labor intensive then, if someone was to say, right, I'm going to be a raw vegan?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many elements to it. And I know, I'm very lucky to have spent quite a lot of time with Kate Magic, and she lives and breathes it. And it's all about, having, I guess even when you're transitioning to a vegan diet, it's having the things to hand that are really useful. So making sure that you've got, all of the things like prepped in big batches, so you're not constantly like, oh, I'm out and there's nothing that I can have. I mean, I do remember the first time we had someone that was actually a fruitarian that came to Asparagasm, and that was the challenge. That was like only things with seeds, no oil, no salt. I think I made like a tomato gazpacho that was, I tried, but So with anything, I guess it depends, and it, some things really suit some people, and especially people that go down the kind of fruit route. But then, yeah, I think it can be labor intensive. But I think a lot of people will eat more raw than they realize. Like, I think I've gone through phases, especially when over in places like Bali, when you're kind of like 80% raw, just because, you're just having loads of fresh stuff, and it's, topped with a little bit of this, or you might have some like rice or something on the side. But if you can have a lot.
Presumably raw food is better for us because the nutrients haven't been cooked. Is that, I know some things are different though, aren't they? For example, with tomatoes, if they're actually cooked, we absorb these lycopene better. So, is a raw food diet always better for our health or not?
No, I think everyone is so different. It really depends on your constitution. Like, some people are going to really suit that kind of like, I think if you looked at it kind of like more, when people look at like Ayurveda or different things, different body types will just suit different things. But certainly, like, a lot of people will need cooked food, because also if we do have, whether it's grains or whatever, the cooking process, obviously, we all need slightly different things, but those things will have so many benefits. And I think it really depends on, you and what you're going through. And obviously, if you have any sort of like digestive issues, then raw food it can be really hard to digest. So it's kind of, finding that balance between all of the things. Whereas if you have, say, like nuts that have been like soaked and blended and maybe fermented, then that will be more digestible than like the raw nut, but would still be raw. So there's, I think there's loads of benefits of, I think, having more raw things, but I definitely wouldn't say that like 100% raw is going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
It's
fascinating, isn't it? It really is. Tell us about the Plant Academy then, because that's kind of your latest project, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I guess so. So Plant Academy came about. So after I'd been traveling and teaching abroad, I really wanted to bring that kind of experience to London and have a kind of school where people could come from all over the world to really understand and see the power of plant-based food, and not just like, I mean, as you'll have seen from my stuff, it is, it's all about plating, presentation, and there's like a bit of a kind of artistic spin on things. So to really create somewhere that could, share these ideas and bring people together. So we opened in early 2019 and started off kind of, really working out, like, we're doing short courses, and the idea always was to do these like longer classes that were much more substantial and then have 3 parts. So you start off with fundamentals, go on to more advanced plant food, and then the third one would be all about business. And so we kind of opened and did the classes, and then introduced the longer classes after a little while, and it started going really well. And then we had people from literally like all over the place doing stuff. We started off with short classes, went on to these longer courses, and that was really the thing that I was like, okay, like this, it makes sense, people want it, that we had people traveling from everywhere, and it was incredible to just see people coming and having such, incredible experiences. It was always about, showing what is possible. And I feel like it was going in an amazing direction. And then obviously at the beginning of last year, we just about got through our first ever level 3, which is the course in plant-based business. And it was a 10-day course. We had, again, a really, really cool group of plant-based entrepreneurs. And we just about got through it before COVID happened, which it was kind of over that week, so many things happening, and like everyone had traveled and they were, different places were closing. And I don't know how we actually made it through, because we thought that people were going to have to like leave and go home and stuff. Which was tough, but it did. So obviously COVID happened, and it was like, I'd never really wanted to do an online course, just because I think it was because I hadn't experienced something that I could really connect with. I thought, you get an online course, you're left to your own devices. I would start and then I'd stop, and it was hard.
Online's great, isn't it, for convenience, but it's never the same as kind of doing it in person. But,
no, exactly.
Obviously with COVID, we haven't had much choice. So.
But I think, I mean, what we ended up doing, we kind of, over last year, we were like, right, how can we like bring this back to life? Obviously Plant Academy, although short courses were a small part of what we did, it really is about these kind of, it's called Plant 1, 2, 3, which is our kind of like program. And I ended up kind of reimagining how we could do Plant 1 online. And I think it's better than it could have ever been on site. I mean, we did this 3-month experience that was meeting weekly online with, live like 3-hour classes and then homework, and everything was really clearly like videoed. We've got photography with Sarah, who's my business partner at the studio where we are now. And yeah, we did it. It really worked. And we had a really cool group of people. They're all now still really close. And everyone started working together and doing things exactly like they would have if they'd have met on site.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah, so it's and now we brought Plant 2 out, which is the next one that's going to happen live at the end of the year, and then fingers crossed we'll do another on-site class next year, all being well.
And these are all people who are kind of looking to launch plant-based restaurants or cafes or businesses?
Yeah, a real mix. So with Plant 1, it's anyone that's either wants to take plant-based food more seriously, whether it's just for their own lives, get some new recipes and ideas, or a lot of people that are maybe just thinking about like starting something, or a lot of people that are mostly in like design and like that kind of world, but wanting to work in food. So a variety. And then level 2 is more people definitely that are already mostly more in the industry or working somewhere or anything. And then level 3 is we're taking just 10 entrepreneurs who are either pre-start or like have launched already startups.
Fantastic. So the other project is Feed Your Mind Candy, isn't it? So this is obviously in relation to, as you discussed earlier, kind of your passion for mental health, and hugely topical with COVID. It's affected everyone, I think, in some way or another, whether it's anxiety about going out, masks, things like that. I mean, my daughter's been adversely affected mental health. She developed functional tics, which has been very strange.
Wow.
So a bit like Tourette's. It's something that's quite close to my heart now as well. So how does Feed Your Mind Candy work?
Wow, that's incredible. I'm sorry to hear about your daughter, but it's
she's doing well. So hopefully she'll kind of come through it.
Yeah, I'm sure she will. But I mean, and this is the thing. I mean, so Mind Candy's always been about inspiring better mental health through food. So really trying to give the tools to people to think like, how can I better support myself through lifestyle, like everyday lifestyle actions. So it started out as you have that thing in the background, and food has always been my way of like, especially going plant-based and like sharing this kind of like passion and all these ideas. But mental health has always been the thing, like obviously in the background, which is really pushing me forward. And so when I moved back to London a few years ago, I was like, right, I really want to kind of bring this to life. So I began Mind Candy as a pop-up supper club, and then we started doing workshops. So we took over a few different places, did these incredible kind of very experiential kind of asparagism style pop-ups. And then when we opened Plant Academy, I started to run like mini mind food workshops. And it's been for a long time kind of thinking like, okay, like how can I bring this to life? Like I always thought I'd maybe open a space or similar. But most recently I've just almost signed off, finished writing a book all about mental health and food. So Mind Candy has kind of transitioned into something called Mind Food, and it's going to be coming to life in a book, and then hopefully also as more kind of giving more information and doing hopefully in-person stuff in the very near future.
I'm looking forward to reading that. Is it all about kind of gut health, or is it more than that?
Gut health is a huge part of that. And we do talk a lot about kind of gut health and links between the brain and the gut, and using things like fermentation, but also talking about fiber and all of those kind of key things. But the way that the pop-ups and the book and everything is kind of structured is really about kind of connecting people with real ingredients and also tonic herbs, and not just kind of like a wild mix of superfood powders, but like there are some plants that are extremely potent and extremely useful when used in the right way, and trying to make those ideas more accessible and really easy to add in your day. I mean, there's a lot of like things like CBD featured, which is a very like well-known ingredient now. But instead of just kind of having it here and there, I try and use that in food just to make it kind of so much easier to just add into your day and more enjoyable. And also, Mind Food is always about kind of passing on these ideas. So you might come to a supper club and have a CBD chocolate cheesecake, and someone says, oh, what's CBD? And it's like, oh, CBD can be really good for, say, anxiety. And it's like, oh, my friend has been really struggling with that. And it's passing on these little messages, which is really what it's about, I think.
Yeah, it's about getting that conversation started, isn't
Exactly.
it? Because we don't tend to, I know that we have, as a society, started to talk about mental health, but actually on a personal level with people that we don't know that well, you wouldn't necessarily start talking about your mental health issues, or would you? It's kind of just not the done thing. So I think it's really important that we talk about these issues.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm a massive fan of fermented foods. Since going vegan, I definitely feel happier. And oh my God, sauerkraut is like up there as one of my favorite things. How does it work though? I mean, there's so much science now, isn't there? I just don't get it. How does it work? We eat something, our gut feels happy, and then our brain feels happy.
Well, yes, in brief, that's it. But yeah, I mean, fermented foods, like you say, is such a great thing to include, and there's so many different ways of kind of, whether it's sauerkraut, or there's so many things as well that you might not even realize, like obviously things like sourdough bread, or plant-based cheeses, or there's so many different ways that you can get probiotic benefits into your day. And so the way that fermented foods work, I mean, as we know, like everything is very, very connected, but specifically the gut and the brain, there's more serotonin produced in our gut than there is in our brain. Our gut holds a lot of our kind of like immune system and everything. So it's so important that we're firstly nurturing our gut so we can digest and get the most out of all of our foods, but also having a really kind of like good digestive system, because you're going to then, if there's any sort of issue, then that can often even cause mental health issues. Like people will have things like anxiety or insomnia, different things, and it can be stemmed just from, like, you might be intolerant to something that you're having and your gut is just causing this kind of problem. So by really fermented foods is a huge part of that. But then also thinking about things like fiber, there's so many people just don't have enough fiber, so there's a lot in our digestive system that needs to be really thought about. So I think as well if someone has a mental health issue that has maybe come not out of nowhere, but if it kind of springs up and you're like, wow, I'm feeling really like anxious, or I'm feeling really like I'm having problems with sleep a lot, so often that is coming from your gut. It might be that you're not having the right things, you're having something that's really irritating you. So
So if someone is experiencing something like that, would you suggest that they try introducing some probiotic foods into their diet?
Yeah, I think whenever experiencing anything, it's good to kind of like check in with someone that's kind of knows about gut health, especially. There's loads of incredible nutritionists out there, or different practitioners, but because if you go from zero and then you start adding fermented foods, you can be like, it really, it could not agree with you. But there are, lots of fermented foods or drinks that you can add that are quite gentle just to try. There's an amazing coconut kefir, which has been proven in maybe one or maybe more studies that it does have a significant impact on the bacteria in your gut. So you're always, with fermented food, we're introducing more good bacteria into our system. And this particular kefir, I'll double check the name, because I've been using it recently and I can't remember, but comes in these glass bottles, and it's called like a gut shot. And something like that is slightly more gentle on the system. Sometimes if you have things like kombucha or a fermented vegetable, everything, different foods will always work for different people. But having these little gut shots has been really, really interesting. And it is something that's quite like gentle. And if you're having it regularly every day, like with whether it's a tonic herb or fermented food, you're always going to see change over time. But I would definitely say it's like an area to explore, but always having someone to guide you depending on the issue is going to be a good place to start.
Yeah. Oh, that coconut kefir sounds good. You'll have
to
let
really
us know.
good. Yeah.
We'll look it out.
Yeah.
Is that the sort of thing you could make at home yourself, or do you kind of need to buy it and leave it to the experts?
Yeah, well, you can. I think, this one is like they've obviously got some very special system of doing it, which makes it super potent. But I think with lots of fermented vegetables, like, I mean, we do a lot of fermentation at Plant Academy, and especially if you're doing things like sauerkraut or kimchi or kombucha, they are so easy to make yourselves. Have you been making your own sauerkraut?
I have, yes. I've just started. It's taken me all these years. I mean, I did a River Cottage course on sort of fermentation with Naomi Devlin.
I love Naomi Devlin.
It was brilliant, and we did some cheese, and I think it was feta, and we did a few different things. And and I've done another workshop with a local sort of raw vegan cafe, but I've just never got round to it because I've got kids, I'm working full time. I don't know. I just need to, So I think it was literally just last week I've started my first batch. So because I've basically been buying sauerkraut from the local health food shop in the fridge, which is obviously, well, I'd hope it's good quality because it's no good, is it, if you buy it off the shelf? It's
you always have to make sure whenever you're buying any fermented food that it's like a live, like unpasteurized product. So always in the fridge.
Yeah, so I've kind of been buying that, but it comes in plastic and it's expensive, and so I really need to start regularly making my own now, I think.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? I think when you find the ferment that kind of like really is your ferment, then working in really big batches, and especially with sauerkraut, I mean, you don't need, it's cabbage and salt as your kind of like starting point, and just to make a huge batch, like even if it was once every couple of months, you could, working in like very large jars, that would be a fun thing to do. And kids as well, I mean, they enjoy fermenting things.
Yeah, I'll have to get them involved.
Yeah,
especially as I always seem to have a lot of cabbage left over from my Riverford veg box.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That is waiting there to be turned into sauerkraut.
Exactly, yeah. So can you give us a really simple fermentation recipe?
Yeah, of course. I mean, let's go with sauerkraut because it's where we're at. So one whole like white cabbage, you always want to make sure you're getting an organic cabbage, because when you're fermenting anything, if it has been sprayed, then it is likely that it's not going to be full of all those like lovely bacteria that you want in the ferment. And to one cabbage, you just would shred it. So using your knife, take out the core, keep the core and keep the outside leaves. And then shred it as fine as you can. I often use a mandolin so that it's really nice, like just makes it the texture better at the end, but you can just chop it with your knife. And then just sprinkle over 2 tablespoons of salt. I often also like using like a smoked salt or a different salt, so you can kind of put a little twist on it. And then just literally massage that cabbage with the salt, and because the salt will draw out the water, and then there will be a brine that forms. And you can add then any sort of spices to get as creative as you want. I mean, more traditionally, it's like caraway seeds, but I really like doing smoked salt and then chili flakes. But
that sounds good.
Yeah, it's good. Or you could add turmeric or anything. And then sterilized jar, push the cabbage in, making sure there's no air, and then use the outer leaves to really like push in the top, and then seal the jar, leave it on a shelf for up to 5 days, but up to kind of like a couple of months. And just make sure you open it every couple of days, and then after a while you'll have some sauerkraut.
You make it sound really easy, so I can do this.
You can do it. Now you've got the recipe there for you. I'm on hand if you have questions. I often get Instagram DMs with pictures of ferments. Tends to be what happens.
Oh, fantastic. So hopefully I have lots of our listeners DMing you now, asking you for help. Just to finish off, what's your favourite good mood dish?
Ooh, favorite good mood dish.
What's if you're having a bad day, or say you've got a friend coming over for dinner, you really want to cheer them up, what would you cook?
Can I do like a bit of a meal? Because I can't.
Yeah, go for it.
I was like, so I think I would do a little kombucha cocktail to start with, because it kind of would just lift you up. I'd have to have some sort of like little adaptogens in there. I quite like doing like a saffron kombucha, because saffron is very uplifting. So lovely. Saffron kombucha when you come through the door. And then we'd have some little snacks around, because that's quite uplifting, because you're chatting, you just need something to do with your hands. So we'd have some maybe some little fermented pancakes. I think I'd make like fermented pancakes, bit of cashew cream, and then some kind of like, I always like doing like some smoked carrot on top, but also like just some little vegetables, so we can kind of pick those as we're kind of maybe offloading and like, you know, shedding the day.
Yum.
And then for the main, I mean, always something super seasonal. At the moment, I would do like a sprouted wild rice stir fry. So it's kind of like not having to think too much about it, but with like tempeh and then like a nice kind of like CBD sauce. So like CBD tamari and some nut butter. And I think that would be like a kind of hearty, like grounding, not too elaborate, but yeah. And then of course finishing with like a little chocolate pot with medicinal mushrooms. So it would be like maybe like a lion's mane chocolate pot with some like strawberries. Strawberries are amazing at the moment. So like, yeah, strawberry dipped in.
Oh my God. So when can I come round?
Friday?
I'm free Friday. I'll come over.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm quite excited about that too.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. You have really inspired me to up my cooking game. And yeah, thanks ever so much for joining us. If anyone wants to find out more, where can they head? Would it be the Plant Academy website?
Yeah, so you can find out more at Plant Academy, london.co.uk, I believe, or on Instagram, just Plant Academy London. Instagram's always the best place. And yeah, find me as well on Instagram, Lauren_Lovatt. And then soon, or coming soon to different bookshops and elsewhere.
Well, if you'd like to know more about gut health and fermentation, have a listen to episode 10 of season 1, when I spoke to Dr. Sunny Patel, who suffers from Crohn's disease and turned his health around with a plant-based diet. If you enjoyed listening to today's episode, why not share it with a friend or leave us a review on your platform of choice? We'd love to hear what you think. You can also email any questions you have to simplyvegan@anthem.co.uk or follow us on Instagram @simplyveganpodcast and @Vegan Food and Living. Next week, I'll be chatting to EastEnders actor and Our Girl actor Danny Hatchard, who's a vegan and huge animal lover.